Hello, everyone. I want to ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. How many times this week have you apologized for your English? How many times have you said sorry before speaking? How many times have you finished a sentence with, "I am sorry, my English is not very good"? If the answer is more than 0, I want you to hear something important today. Something that might change the way you speak English forever. Every time you apologize for your English before anyone has even judged it, you are not being polite. You are doing something much more damaging. You are teaching your own brain that your voice is something to be ashamed of. That your efforts deserve an apology. That the person in front of you has the right to expect more than you can give. Here is what the research shows. Studies by Dr. Karina Schumann at the University of Pittsburgh found that excessive apologizing when no harm has actually been done, is strongly associated with low self-esteem, reduced confidence, and what psychologists call self-silencing behavior. The habit of apologizing for your English is not humility. It is self-erasure. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why you apologize for your English, what it is doing to your brain and your fluency, and how to replace that habit with something that will genuinely transform the way you communicate. If you keep apologizing, your English will stay small. But if you understand this one shift, your voice will finally begin to grow. Stay with me. Part 1. Where the apology habit comes from. To understand why so many English learners apologize for their language, you need to understand where that habit comes from. Because it does not come from nowhere. It comes from a very specific kind of learning experience that most people have had. Think about how most people learn English. In classrooms where mistakes are marked in red. In environments where wrong answers are corrected in front of others. In systems that measure and grade and rank. In situations where the gap between your English and a native speaker's English is treated as a deficit to be fixed rather than progress to be celebrated. Over years of this kind of experience, the brain learns a very specific association. English mistakes equal judgment. English imperfection equals failure. And the safest strategy is to manage expectations downward before you even begin. To apologize first, so that when the imperfection comes, it has already been excused. Research by Carol Dweck at Stanford University shows that students who experience error-focused learning environments develop what she calls a fixed mindset about their abilities. They believe that their current performance reflects their permanent capacity. And they develop protective behaviors, like preemptive apology, to guard their self-image from the pain of perceived failure. This is not weakness. This is a completely rational response to the environments most English learners have been in. But it is a response that, once internalized, follows you out of the classroom and into every English conversation you have for the rest of your life. Unless you consciously choose to change it. Part 2. What apologizing does to your brain. Here is the neurological reality of what happens when you apologize for your English before speaking. And it is more significant than most people realize. When you say, "I am sorry, my English is not very good," immediately before speaking, you activate your brain's threat response. You prime your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, to treat the upcoming communication as dangerous. You flood your working memory with self-monitoring signals. Watch for mistakes, prepare for judgment, manage the other person's expectations. Research from the University of Michigan shows that self-focused anxiety during communication, worrying about how you are being perceived rather than focusing on what you are trying to say, reduces working memory capacity by up to 30%. The mental resources you need to find words, construct sentences, and express ideas are redirected toward self-protection. In practical terms, this means that apologizing for your English before speaking makes your English worse. Not because your actual language ability changes, but because the mental state created by the apology interferes directly with the cognitive processes required for fluent communication. The apology is supposed to protect you from judgment. but it actually creates the conditions for the very failure it is trying to excuse. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You apologize because you are afraid of speaking poorly. The apology creates the mental state that makes you speak more poorly. And the poor speaking confirms the belief that you should have apologized. Breaking this cycle is not just about confidence. It is about giving your brain the conditions it needs to access the English you have already learned. Part 3. The hidden message in every apology. Here is something I want you to consider very carefully. When you apologize for your English to another person, what message are you actually sending? Not the message you intend. The message they receive. You intend to signal humility, to manage expectations, to be considerate of the other person's time and patience. These are genuine, kind impulses. But research on social perception shows that the message received is often quite different. Studies by Vanessa Bones at Cornell University show that excessive self-deprecation, consistently presenting yourself as less capable than you are, reduces the other person's confidence in you. It does not make them more patient. It makes them less engaged, less interested in what you have to say, less likely to invest attention in the conversation. More significantly, it puts the other person in an uncomfortable position. Now they feel obligated to reassure you, to say, "No, your English is very good," to manage your self-esteem rather than simply having a conversation. The apology, intended to make the other person comfortable, actually creates a social burden for them. And for children or younger learners watching you, it sends a message that is particularly damaging. It says, speaking imperfect English is something to be ashamed of. It normalizes self-apology as the appropriate response to language learning. And it teaches the next generation to shrink their voices before they have even fully found them. Your English, however imperfect, is a genuine achievement. It represents hours of study, practice, courage, and commitment. It deserves to be presented without apology. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet dignity of someone who is doing something genuinely difficult and doing it anyway. Part 4. The difference between humility and self-erasure. Here is a distinction that will change how you think about this. There is a real and important difference between genuine humility and self-erasure. And the English apology habit is almost always the latter, not the former. Genuine humility is an accurate assessment of your abilities combined with openness to learning and improvement. It does not require preemptive apology. It shows up in your willingness to ask questions, to admit when you do not understand, to be curious rather than defensive. Genuine humility is a strength. Self-erasure is different. It is the habit of minimizing yourself before others can minimize you. Of apologizing for your existence in the conversation, of shrinking your presence to make yourself a smaller target for judgment. Self-erasure feels like humility, but it is actually a form of fear wearing the mask of politeness. Research by Brené Brown at the University of Houston shows that self-erasure, consistently making yourself small to avoid judgment, is one of the most significant barriers to authentic human connection. When you erase yourself in conversation, you deny the other person access to the real you. And genuine connection requires the real you. Your English, with all its current imperfections, is part of the real you. The real you who has been working hard, who is in the middle of a genuine journey, who has something worth saying even if the grammar is not perfect. That person does not need to apologize. That person deserves to be heard. Part 5. What to say instead. So if you stop apologizing, what do you say instead? Let me give you something specific and immediately usable. Because changing a habit requires having a replacement behavior ready. The most powerful alternative to apologizing is simply beginning. Not with an apology. Not with a disclaimer. Not with a warning. Just with what you want to say. Open your mouth and speak. The absence of an apology is itself a powerful statement. It says, I belong in this conversation. My words are worth hearing. If you feel genuinely uncertain about a specific word or phrase, there are confident alternatives to apology. Instead of, I am sorry, I do not know the right word, try, I am looking for the right word. Give me a moment. This frames the pause as thinking, not failure. It is accurate, honest, and confident. Instead of, my English is not very good, but I want to say, try simply saying what you want to say. If you genuinely want to acknowledge you are learning, try, I'm still developing my English. The difference is subtle but profound. Learning something implies forward movement, growth, progress. Not being very good implies a fixed efficiency. Research on framing effects shows that the words we use to describe our situation activate specific emotional and cognitive states. Framing your English as something you are developing rather than something that is not good enough changes how you experience it. And how you experience it changes how you express it. Part 6. Building English confidence that lasts. Here is what genuine English confidence looks like. Not the performance of confidence. Not pretending to be more capable than you are, but the quiet, grounded sense of self-worth that says, I have something worth contributing, and I'm going to contribute it in the best English I have available right now. Research by Albert Bandura at Stanford University shows that self-efficacy, the belief that you are capable of performing a task successfully, is one of the strongest predictors of actual performance. And crucially, self-efficacy is built not through thinking positive thoughts, but through what Bandura calls mastery experiences. Small, successful experiences of doing the thing you are afraid of. Every time you speak English without apologizing, every time you complete a sentence without self-interruption to apologize, you create a small mastery experience. Your brain registers, I spoke English. I was not perfect. And the world did not end. In fact, the conversation continued. And gradually, those experiences accumulate into genuine confidence. This is why the instruction to stop apologizing is not just about social behavior. It is a cognitive training strategy. Every unapologetic English sentence you speak is a vote for a new belief about yourself. The belief that your English, as it is right now, is good enough for real communication. Because it is. It always has been. Part 7. The Global English Revolution. Here is something that will completely reframe how you think about your English in the modern world. English is no longer primarily the language of native speakers. It is the global language of everyone. Research by linguist David Crystal estimates that there are currently between 1.5 and 2 billion English speakers in the world. Of those, only approximately 400 million are native speakers. That means roughly 75% of English communication in the world today happens between non-native speakers. Between people exactly like you. The idea that there is one correct English, the English of native speakers from Britain or America or Australia, and that everything else is an inferior version deserving apology, is linguistically inaccurate and historically outdated. Linguists now speak of world Englishes, the many legitimate varieties of English spoken by billions of people around the world, each valid, each functional, each worthy of respect. Your English is not a failed attempt at native English. It is a genuine variety of world English. It carries with it your background, your culture, your way of thinking. And those things are not deficiencies. They are contributions. They make global English communication richer, more diverse, and more interesting. Research from the British Council shows that English learners who embrace their identity as world English speakers, rather than aspiring to native speaker norms, show significantly higher confidence, communication effectiveness, and language development over time. Accepting your English as valid and worthy is not lowering your standards. It is having accurate ones. Part 8. The role of mistakes in learning. Here is a fundamental truth about language acquisition that most people have never been clearly told. Mistakes are not the enemy of fluency. Mistakes are the mechanism of fluency. Without mistakes, there is no learning. Without errors, there is no improvement. Mistakes are not what you do when you fail. They are what you do when you are learning. Research by linguist Stephen Krashen shows that language acquisition happens through what he calls comprehensible input, exposure to language slightly above your current level, and through communication where meaning is the primary goal. Error correction and preoccupation with correctness actually slow acquisition by raising the effective filter and reducing the risk-taking that language learning requires. Every major language learning success story involves thousands of mistakes. Thousands of wrong words, wrong tenses, wrong pronunciations, wrong idioms. Not despite these mistakes. Because of them. Each mistake is your brain's way of testing a hypothesis about the language and receiving feedback. That feedback, positive or negative, builds the neural map of the language you are acquiring. When you apologize for potential mistakes before speaking, you are not just managing social expectations. You are sending a signal to your own brain that mistakes are dangerous, that they require preemptive damage control. And a brain that treats mistakes as dangerous will avoid the risk-taking that learning requires. It will play it safe. Stick to what it already knows. And stop growing. The learner who makes mistakes boldly, without apology, and pays attention to the feedback they receive, learns faster, develops more natural language, and reaches fluency more quickly than the learner who plays it safe and apologizes for every imperfection. Part 9. Rewriting your English story. Here is the deepest work we need to do today. Because the apology habit is not just a behavior. It is the expression of a story you are telling about yourself. And that story needs to be rewritten. The old story goes something like this. My English is not good enough. I am embarrassed by my mistakes. I need to warn people before I speak so they do not expect too much from me. I am a learner, which means I am not yet a real speaker. This story is not just inaccurate. It is actively harmful. Because stories about ourselves shape our behavior. And behavior shapes our reality. As long as you tell this story, you will keep apologizing. And as long as you keep apologizing, the story will keep feeling true. The new story sounds like this. I am a world English speaker in the process of developing my ability. My English, right now, is enough to communicate something real. My mistakes are evidence that I am learning, not evidence that I am failing. I have something worth saying, and I'm going to say it. Research by James Pennebaker at the University of Texas shows that the language we use to narrate our own experiences has measurable effects on our psychological well-being, our behavior, and our physical health. Rewriting your English story is not just positive thinking. It is a genuine cognitive intervention that changes how you experience every English interaction you have. Start today. Every time you catch yourself about to apologize for your English, pause. Take one breath. And instead of the apology, say what you came to say. One brave, unapologetic sentence at a time. Part 10. Your voice has always been enough. Here is what I want you to feel right now. Not pressure to be more confident than you feel. Not instruction to pretend your English is better than it is. But a genuine recognition of something that has always been true and that you may have forgotten. Your voice has always been enough. Not your perfect voice. Not your future fluent voice. The voice you have right now. The voice that has been working hard, practicing, learning, growing. The voice that showed up to this video today because it wants to be heard. That voice is enough. You do not need to apologize for being in the middle of a journey. Every person who has ever become fluent in English was in the middle of that journey once. Every native speaker was once a child making mistakes with their own language. No stage of the journey is something to be ashamed of. Every stage is something to be honored. Research shows that people who speak with confidence, even imperfect confidence, are perceived as more competent, more interesting, and more worth listening to than people who speak with hesitation and excessive apology. Not because their language is better, but because their relationship with their own voice is better. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not someone whose English requires a warning label. You are a person with something real to say, in a language you are genuinely developing, speaking to a world that needs exactly what only you can contribute. Final message. The next time you feel the urge to apologize for your English before someone has even asked you to, I want you to pause. Just one breath. And in that pause, remember this. Your English is the result of genuine effort. Of hours of listening, practicing, struggling, and showing up. It does not deserve an apology. It deserves to be spoken with the quiet dignity of someone who knows that what they are doing is real, and valuable, and worth doing imperfectly rather than not at all. The world does not need more people who apologize for their voices. The world needs more people who use their voices. Even imperfectly. Even nervously. Even with accents and mistakes and moments of searching for the right word. Because those voices, all of them, are contributing something that the world would be poorer without. So from today, stop apologizing. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. And real is always enough. Something inside you knows this. Something inside you has always known that your voice matters. And today is the day you start acting like it. Now I want to hear from you. Write one English sentence in the comments. No apology at the beginning. No sorry, my English is not good. Just one sentence. Whatever you want to say. The simplest, most honest English sentence you can write right now. I read every comment carefully. And I will never judge your English. I will only celebrate that you used your voice. If this video helped you, subscribe to Gentle Wisdom. And remember, your English does not need an apology. It needs an audience. See you in the next video.